Hey, what is going on, guys? My name is Leaf, and in this video, I've partnered with my friend and fellow career coach, Yasir Khan, to answer some of the most frequently asked job hunting questions that we got. So here's the rundown. Me and him and I made a LinkedIn post where we asked everyone, hey guys, what is your biggest job hunting question you have? We got a ton of great replies, and we decided, hey, let's just jump on a Zoom call and methodologically go through each of the questions and answer them in that Zoom call and share it with everyone. So that's kind of exactly what we did. So here's how you should use this video. So underneath in the description, you will see timestamps for each of the questions that we answered essentially. And what I'd like you to do is go through the description and find the question that really resonates with you personally. Click that timestamp so then the video can jump straight to your questions, so you don't have to waste time watching the whole thing. I mean, if you want to watch the whole thing, heck yeah, like I'd love that. I mean, we're pretty fun people. So that's kind of how you use the video. So with that being said, be sure to follow Yasir on LinkedIn and his awesome YouTube channel, and let's just jump right into it.
I think this is actually a really good question because there are a lot of people who aren't using LinkedIn at all, like a lot of hiring managers. So I guess you have more expertise with that. What would you recommend to those people?
Yeah, you know what's funny? Someone actually reached out to me and they were like, hey, I'm in construction. How do I message someone in construction? And I'm like, that's a really damn good question. Like, I wouldn't even know where to begin. But I think that it's a parallel question. Like, how do you reach out to people who aren't necessarily on a desk and a 9-to-5 where they can open a tab that says like LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook or something of that nature? And I think a lot of this is, understanding where your target audience is. For example, let's say you are trying to get into construction. Maybe there is a forum online for all construction workers where they go and they kind of have their own Reddit of the world where they talk with one another, right? And I think it's not necessarily like if they're on LinkedIn, it's more about like, where does my ideal target audience hang out? Maybe there's an online conference of some sort where a lot of construction workers or people in quality assurance or regulatory affairs, they just attend a lot. Maybe that's where you want to go into, right? And every industry will have their own unique like sub communities of some sort. So I think it's a matter of focusing on that and doubling down on that. But I wouldn't ignore social media or LinkedIn as well. It's all, there might be opportunities with that as well.
Yeah, and I think an interesting point to bring up is don't use it exclusively as your strategy. Like if they don't reply on LinkedIn, don't just wait for them on LinkedIn. One of the things I've noticed in the hierarchy of contact I recommend is start with email, then move to LinkedIn, then other social media strategies. Because when I come to work, when most people come to work, one thing they check right at 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. is their email inbox, right? So if you do a little bit of hunting around, there's a tool called hunter.io. There's Mail Scoop. You can actually use those to find their emails, regardless of which industry they're in. I think if you reach out to them on the email, they don't respond there, then you reach out to them on LinkedIn, eventually they're going to be like, this person is following me around everywhere. Let me just reply to this guy.
Yeah, persistence. Yeah, I love that. I love how you mentioned hunter.io and Mail Scoop. Email is huge. Everyone uses email, so definitely start there.
And awesome, then I think the other thing to remember is not everyone uses LinkedIn. I know people in the career space who don't use LinkedIn. I connected with a lot of career advisors and university career counselors, whatnot. I got a response from some of them after 2 weeks, and they said, I just simply don't use LinkedIn. And that was surprising for me. It was like, well, you're the career space, but so much of their time is spent actually guiding students, talking to students. That's their day-to-day life. They don't really need to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So I think we might think everyone's on LinkedIn, but they are on LinkedIn, but they're not really using it as actively.
How do you interpret this question? From your
tricks. That's a funny word to use with resume. Like, what kind of trick can I? How can I throw a curveball on my resume? I feel like the question is really implying what can I do? What are best practices, right? Let's just assume that's what they meant, and this could be so many different things. Okay, so to start out with, I think the most important thing you can do right now is stop spamming your resume in 50 different directions and 100 different directions, especially if you have one version of your resume. Now, I'm sure, Aleph, you've done this. I've done this at some point in our life. We went to Word, we put up a bunch of stuff on Word and like apply, just send it everywhere. And then nothing happens, right? And then you're wondering, what are all these tricks that I can employ? What are all these tactics? My number one advice would always be to make your resume as if you're communicating with like a 10-year-old. Make it sound simple, make it sound quantifiable, and bring up the most relevant points super early on. If you make the recruiter have to search for your resume to find how you're transferable to that role, it's just going to make it that much harder. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I want to echo a lot of what you're saying. You know, a lot of people, when they apply for a job, then they don't get it, and then they try these tricks and techniques, and they're in the loop of like, what's this trick, and then the worst part is every career coach or resume writer will see resume differently, so you're getting different advice from your uncle who works in HR, from the career counselor from your university, and they're all saying different things, and you're in this loop or trap. And the way I see it is that, you know, I base my resume off of like, it just needs to be good enough. And the thing that pulls you in for the job is the referral that's pulling you, vouching for you in order to get the role. So for me, I've had shitty resumes and I've still gotten jobs with them. And I didn't employ like a ATS hack and tricks of 2020 or anything of that nature. Instead, if you're looking for a hack to get a job fast, it's mainly going to be depending on referrals into a role. So if you're finding you're applying to jobs online consistently and you're not getting hit with any job opportunities, then it's time to double down on networking, which we'll go into. But yeah.
And I feel like this whole emphasis on the ATS, how to beat the ATS, how to pass your... Why are you so much of your attention on the freaking ATS? There's other ways of getting into a job position, like talk to the actual person you'll be working with, right? And then I've seen people who literally take the keywords in the job description in a white font and they like put it really small on the bottom of the resume so it shows up in the ATS. Well, what's the point of that? You're not qualified. You're not qualified for the role. No amount of words you can stick in your resume is going to make you more qualified. So I think when you're thinking of beating the ATS, it's simple enough. They're asking for a couple of things. Show them you have those things. If you don't have them, talk to someone on the team. Ask them, hey, I am someone with XYZ experience. I don't quite have this. Is this a deal breaker for you? They will tell you. That's all you have. Instead of like cracking a code and figuring out how the ATS, it's not worth
I hate that acronym, ATS. Like, I've heard that so many times. Like, how do I beat the ATS? ATS, they're the devil or like the gatekeeper of an opportunity. Oh God, stop.
It's just like, I think the less you think about how to game the system, the better. The more you're thinking about talking to people, the more time you'll save for yourself. And you keep
100%.
saying as well. Right. I'll speak from a recruiter standpoint. You have more experience reaching out to managers, I can tell you that. One thing I'll tell you when you're reaching out to recruiters, for God's sake, do not send a whole paragraph of your entire life experience, where you were born, where your granddad was born, how you immigrated. Don't tell me about any of that stuff. Don't attach your resume. Don't say any of that stuff because it becomes a transaction. I don't know who you are, and you are enlisting a responsibility on a stranger. You say, hey, here's my resume. Look at my resume. Tell me if I'm a good fit. Review my profile. I don't know who you are. You've taken no steps to establish a connection with me. Now, I want to give you a really good example. Someone reached out to me recently and she said, Yasser, I saw your post about how it's very important to network to find a job. I did have a question about networking. I've been trying to reach out to some hiring managers. I'm not getting their attention. What would you recommend I do instead? I replied to that message within 5 minutes of reading it because it was specific to me. She showed me that she actually engaged with my content and she wanted my specific advice. She wasn't shooting the same message to 50 different people. So I think a good way to think about it is the less you make it about yourself, the better. Show them that you've reached out to them as someone who can give them advice, not someone who can do you a favor. That's a very important distinction in my opinion.
Really good one. I remember working recruiting, I'll get tons of messages and I'm like, oh God, this is a lot. There's a lot to deal with. In terms of like reaching out to like hiring managers and potential employers, I would like to echo a lot of what you said yesterday. Before you reach out to them, you want to get them to understand you and you want to nurture that relationship. And the best way to do that is, if they're posting a lot of LinkedIn articles, making a lot of LinkedIn posts, just leaving like a like and a very thoughtful comment on what they're doing, just to acknowledge like, hey, I actually appreciate you and what you're up to, it'll get you on their radar, and then they're more likely to help you out because you're engaging with them, their stuff, right? And in terms of tactically how to reach out to them, what I'd recommend you do is actually list down about 5 companies you want to work for, and ideally be specific about the role and then the type of company you want to work for. The more specific, the better. But basically, let's say you want to work at, I don't know, like Deloitte, and you want to be a human resource coordinator or at Deloitte. What you want to do is, search up Deloitte on LinkedIn and then go on there, see all whatever employees on their company page and try to find out supervisors, team leads, managers, influential people who have power to refer you into a role. Reach out to them and then engage with the content, like get them to like understand you, take time to learn about them and everything, and then you want to basically send them a quick connection request with a note and a specific note. And keep in mind, do not send a connection request giving them your resume or asking for a referral into a job or anything of that nature. You just want to go in with the connection request and then note saying, hey Matthew, I noticed you are an HR manager at Deloitte. I myself am looking to get into that space. Can I just ask you for 15 minutes of your time for career advice? And this does 3 things. First, it's an easy, small ask. Like a quick 15-minute conversation is very small. Second, it implies your job hunting, so they know you're looking for a job. And third, like people love talking and giving advice. That's why we're on a call like this. It's just fun to do that, right? And help. It's fun to help people out. So that's how I kind of recommend you go about reaching out to influential key players in companies.
That's a very interesting step. I like that a lot. So you're asking people in your industry to give you advice on how you can get into that industry. So basically giving you a blueprint, right? Yeah. I know a lot of people who do this already, but they always come back saying, oh, they don't either reply or I don't get a good response. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, so I've used this strategy for my last 3 jobs, and I'll tell you the stats. If you send out, let's say 100 of these messages, about 1 in 3 will get back to you. And those 1 in 3, what sometimes happens is they will accept your connection request. But the thing is with LinkedIn from their phone, if you accept it and you see a connection request with a note on it, if you accept it, the whole interface changes from that message to something else. So they'll actually forget that you sent an actual message in that connection request. So you actually have to do follow-ups. And from my experience, when I did the follow-ups, they were actually thankful. Like, oh, thank you so much for following up. Yeah, for sure. I'd be happy to get on a call with you, right? So I think the big thing is like, don't have high expectations and do prepare for rejections. Because again, 1 in 3 will get back to you. In terms of converting it into a job, we'll probably talk about follow-ups after. We'll get into later. But that's my take on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to share a story about my client as well. She was looking into one of these consulting positions, and the position had been open for a while, and she was trying to connect with them on LinkedIn. So she actually reached out to people in the company, not a whole lot of responses coming in. She found the actual hiring manager on LinkedIn, and he had shared the job posting on his own LinkedIn profile with almost no engagement at all. So she went there, she commented, hey, I love what you guys are doing. I saw the job posting. It seems really interesting. Laid out a big paragraph of a comment on that post where no one else is engaged. That person eventually logged on to LinkedIn and saw the one person who commented on his post, said, you know what, send me your resume. Let's get on a call. Let's talk more about it. And that's how she actually got herself an opportunity.
Yeah, great question, man. I always use an analogy. I find stories are really helpful to get over these kind of belief systems. I say, if you had a younger cousin who, I don't know, is about to go into university, let's say, and they reached out to you and they were like, hey, Anna, or hey, Yasir, you know what? Like, I'm really nervous going into university. Can I just ask you for some advice over a phone call? Is that something you're comfortable with? Like, how would you feel in that moment? You almost feel honored, appreciated. Like, oh, I know my shit. Oh, you actually want to come with me, right? Yeah. And that's the exact feeling that you want to portray here in the situation. So if you put your mindset in that perspective, it helps you get over like that, oh my God, I'm an inconvenience, or I'm shallow, or all the weird quirky stuff. Yeah.
Right. I think what you said, it's implying the other person is an expert in their field. Everyone likes being an expert in some field, right? Like, oh, I've seen you're so successful in making a YouTube channel, Yasser, or you've done a TED Talk, Yasser. I want to know more about how you did it. First of all, you're flattering me in a way. You're boosting my ego. You're validating my experiences. And at the same time, it shows me that you've done enough research on me to reach out and connect with me. So I think all these elements combined, when you do reach out to hiring managers, even if you reach out to recruiters, you're going to have a higher response rate. I'll explain what it's like on a recruiter's end, and you can talk more about the hiring managers as well. With a recruiter, we are working on various different roles at the same time. I might be working on an accounting position, an admin position, or whatever position. And usually for every single role, we have upwards of 300 people apply for every single role. So if you reach out to me with a giant paragraph, with a resume cover letter attached, I don't really have a lot of incentive to go out of my way to review your resume because I already have 300 other people to review, right? I don't want an extra task on top of that. More on top of that is the hiring managers know more about the exact requirements for the role than a recruiter would, because a recruiter is given that information by the hiring manager. Hey, we're looking for someone on our team who can do X, Y, Z. But really the day-to-day, the expectations, the hiring managers can do better. So when you are reaching out to people for the interviews you suggested, for insight, for career advice, a lot of people reach out to recruiters for that. I would actually recommend reach out to people on the actual team you'll be working with. Eliminate the middle person, talk to the person on the team, talk to the hiring manager, talk to them about the role, talk to them about their expectations. Eventually in that conversation, you can ask them, hey, based on our discussion, do you think I might be a good fit? They'll either say yes, go ahead and apply, or they'll say, you know what, get another year of experience, come back, and then we'll have a chat. The worst thing you've done is you've created a network for yourself, you've created a connection for yourself. So I think a lot of frustration for a lot of job seekers comes from reaching out to recruiters and asking them advice when they don't really have any incentive to go out of their way and do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I actually want to ask you a question about that. So a lot of people, like, especially in the job, they want to reach out to specifically recruiters and HR people. If they want to get in accounting, they reach out to HR or recruiters.
Right.
Do you recommend them to reach out to HR people? Like, is that a good tactic, or?
I would only recommend to follow up on their application. I think, and I don't want to speak for all HR people, but some are just more helpful than others, right? And I feel when you are contacting hiring managers and people on the team, you have a direct relation to the person making the decision for your hire. They might be a lot more inclined to reply than an HR person. That's just in my experience.
And I've noticed a lot of companies have referral bonuses. So like if an employee refers someone to a job and they actually stay, they actually get money. So it's not a bad approach to kind of reach out to like a employee, in the team that you might be working in.
That's actually how I got hired as well. I got hired as a referral.
A referral, right? Yeah, referrals are the thing.
Yeah, an in-house is basically someone who works in the company, is in the industry environment. These people, they usually work with very specific roles, and they know internally how the company operates a lot better. So suppose you're working for an engineering firm and you've been recruiting specifically for that company, you know what the company culture is like, you know what kind of requirement they're looking for. Is it a regulatory environment, not a regulatory environment? Are you looking for more professional people, less professional? So it's just like when you are immersed in that environment, you know a lot better about what kind of applications come in. When you are an agency, when you're working externally, you do still have that. I work with an agency. We are an HR firm as well, but you're not directly involved in everyday processes in that company. You have your own way of doing things. You have your own protocol. But again, it depends on agency to agency, how much time they're willing to take out to understand their clients, how they operate, what kind of clients they're looking for. And between agencies, some might take a lot of time to do role discoveries with the managers, like what are you looking for, and down to the nitty gritty, while some might have a very surface level understanding. Oh, you're looking for an accountant with 3 years of experience, that's good enough for us, we'll just go and check it out. So it completely depends on the agency, the recruiter, the level of experience they have. But I feel like the way you are reaching out to these recruiters can be a little bit different, because in-house recruiters will have a lot more knowledge about what kind of roles are coming in, what kind of systematic roles come in. Do we hire every 3 months? Do we hire every 4 months? Are we looking to hire in the next 6 months? So agencies might not have that, because some agencies work in one-off fashion. So maybe a role comes in, they'll work on that role, and then they won't work on another role with that company for like another year. So there's a lot of distinctions to be made there, but I think, again, coming back to the point, always reach out to people on the team regardless of which recruiting method they're using. There's a lot of people who complain about, a recruiter is supposed to get me a job. Why aren't you finding me a job, or what? No, a recruiter is not supposed to find you a job. That is not the responsibility of a recruiter. The recruiter works for the client. They work for the employer. Their job is to find employees for the client. Yes, in order to do that, we have to give jobs to people who are coming into that company. But my responsibility isn't to the 300 people applying, it's to the one client who's hiring. And that's a very, very big distinction. If you're looking for someone who can guarantee you a job posting, a recruiter is not the person you're looking for.
Wow, I feel like people, if the listeners or whatever, they heard that, they're like, oh shoot, I've been doing it all wrong. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. I think a lot of my friends as well, they're like, yeah, sir, I heard you're a recruiter. Can you get me a job? I'm like, that's not how my job works. I'm recruiting for certain roles. If you're a good fit for them, we can definitely have a look at your resume. But my job isn't to get you a job. My job is to candidates for my clients, and as a career coach, that's my job. But that's a different thing entirely. It's interesting, the life of a recruiter. People think we're trying to have a reason not to look at your resume, just like 6 seconds and then it's gone, where it just completely disappears. No, it's not like that. If I can tell in the first 5 seconds you're not a good fit, I'm just not going to continue reading your resume, right? If I'm looking for a hospitality manager and the first thing on your resume is you're an accounting clerk, I mean, it's not exactly very relevant to what I'm hiring. Why should I spend 5 minutes instead of just moving on to the next one who might be more relevant?
That's
there we go. The networking code. Yeah, everything's like a trick.
I know, a tactic.
How do we get around? You know,
the shortcuts.
Like a boxing match going on here. I feel like you can speak more to this than I can.
Yeah, I think in terms of cracking network code, and this is like the cliche answer, but honestly, networking is relationship building. You can't approach an event or conference or a networking event with the aim of, I will walk out of here with a job. Like, I think the key to networking is, especially when you're job hunting, and I know when you're job hunting, there's a scarcity mindset. Expenses are coming and I need a job right away. So hence, every conversation I have with whoever must be a referral into a job, and it gets into that kind of thinking. Whereas the way you want to approach networking during the job hunt period is more like what I call blind naiveness, meaning you just kind of talk to people for the sake of talking, and you just have this blind naive belief that this will work out. And once for me, when I was job hunting, I would just go on calls with people like, hey, what's up? How are you? And then without any intention for a job, even though I was looking for a job and then that pressure was on. And it's weird because people came up to me, oh, by the way, you mentioned you look for a job. Here's a referral. Or here's this. Or I can connect you with this person. And it was never my intention to get out of the conversation. But after approaching it from like, oh my God, you're interesting. Let me talk to you. Let me talk to you. Oh, it's cool. Mm-hmm. Things just happen to come towards me. Yeah, well, first thing I would say is like, you should have already established a network with the people who work there before even that job posting happened. You know what I mean? Like, through a quick LinkedIn message, hey, by the way, and get a phone call, how are you, blah, blah, all this stuff, right? So that would be the first step. But let's say hypothetically, like, it came to a situation where you're on a phone call with the manager, there's an opening, you really, really want it. How do you actually, like, ask about it and ask for a referral? What I'd actually recommend you do is, again, the same outline as before, ask for advice on, hey, I noticed there's an opening. Do you have any advice for me, on how I should, write out my application for this role, or, any skills you think I should develop to prepare me for this role? I would say, I don't know why, but like, it just asking for advice implies you're going for the role, you know what I mean? But it also comes off as like, you're the expert and you know what, you're amazing and everything. Maybe I can learn from you. So like, it's weird in this culture. It's like not a direct, you can't be so direct where it's like obtrusive. You also have to be like indirect, and advice is kind of like in my opinion, one of the best ways to go about it.
Yeah. And when you're going into this meeting, do you, for example, you saw the job posting and you're reaching out to the hiring manager. When you're reaching out to them, do you tell them that you're looking for advice specifically regarding that role, or do you bring that up when you actually speak to them?
Yeah, honestly, I've been in calls, like I've been asked for informational interviews from people who are looking to get a job, and this is my talent acquisition days. And in the call, they would be like, by the way, I saw an opening. Do you have like, can you help me out, right? And it hit me because at first going into the call, my mind was like, oh, cool, great conversation, a young student, amazing. Then when that point came in where they were like, I'm actually using you to get this job. Yeah. And then it hit me like, oh God, like what the hell? Like nothing was authentic about that. So, you know, feel it out for sure, like depending on the situation. But in fact, if I were you, I'd probably say something like, you know, in the messaging and prep them before, and so they're psychologically prepared, like, can I ask for general career advice and also any tips on applying for this role? That's it. Just very simple, so that they come in with that approach, so you don't break their hearts in the call.
Right, right.
Yeah, that's a great question. So between the period of when you met them to like 2 months later when the job opening happens, there should have been some nurturing done. You know, a quick email once every 2 weeks for the first month, and a quick touch base once a month from that. So you guys can sort of keep you in the loop. So by the time the opening comes, it's not an awkward, oh, by the way, it's been so long, can you give me this job? You know what I mean? You don't hit them with that, like, hit, right? But honestly, if you really wanted this job openings there, they didn't come for you. What you might, you know, I'm a big believer in like just being straightforward sometimes, because sometimes when I get a LinkedIn message and someone starts off the question with like, hey, how are you, Alif? On my LinkedIn message, and I'm like, what do you want? Like, what do you, yeah, like, what do you want? Or like, you know, when people are fundraising, they're sending cold messages out and they're like, hey, can you donate? I appreciate the ones that are like, hey, by the way, I know it's been a while, but out of the blue, but can you donate here? Then I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But if they're like, hey, how are you? Good. It's been a while, right? Okay, can you donate? That just comes off as annoying to me. So we can apply the same principles here in this situation. So I would be very straightforward. Hey, yeah, so, you know, it's been a while and everything. Hope you and kids are doing well, or whatever you talked about. I noticed there's an opening. Again, do you have any tips maybe for me in terms of how I can apply for this role? I really appreciate your time. I'll grab you a coffee or whatever it is, right? So that's my approach.
That's really good advice. Again, I think the key is not to come across as disingenuous when you're getting on the informational interview for a certain reason, and you're like, hey, by the way, I saw this job posting you guys got. Any chance you can like slide me in? Then it sounds like really offhanded, you know, like, okay, now I know what this is really about. It's not about me being an expert, you wanting advice. This is about you getting a job. And then it becomes really, really sleazy. I remember doing this wrong early in my career as well, and you learn really fast, because the moment you say like, oh, that didn't sound right, right? And then I know people that they're eager. They're like, oh my God, I need to be networking to get a job. This is the only way to do it. So when they finally get on a call with someone, it's almost like intrinsically they feel they need to do it. Otherwise, there's no other reason. I feel like if you take that approach, you really risk damaging whatever relationship you've built up until that point, because it's probably the first time you've met this person. You don't really know them well enough. And if you seek a transaction, if you seek a favor right off the bat, it comes across as, oh, well, I don't really know you that well. Do I really want to refer you? Do I really want to recommend you? I don't know enough about you, right? And I think with what you said about nurturing, that really comes a long way.
So first, you know, let's talk about how often to follow up. So I mentioned before, for the first month, once every 2 weeks through a quick LinkedIn message or an email. From then on, once a month. Gauge the relationship. If you're best friends, then you can probably do it way more often. But if you're like on that LinkedIn vibe kind of networking relationship type, then, you know, once a month's good enough. But in terms of how to reach out, like, what do you say? There's a couple things you can go about it. First, when you end the informational interview, ask them, hey, Yasser, it was great talking with you, and I can tell that you're an expert. Are you comfortable if I can keep you in the loop with my journey through a quick email once every 2 weeks or so? You know, what you're doing here is essentially saying, I need an excuse to follow up with you so you don't forget about me when a job opportunity comes up. So that's the first thing you definitely want to do. Second is you want to execute their advice. And if you execute their advice, I guarantee you it'll help you stand out compared to like 90% of job seekers out there. Because the fact is, most people will go on information interviews, they'll like end the call, nothing will happen. But if you actually follow up, being like, by the way, you told me to apply to this course. I actually applied. Here's a screenshot of my application. Thanks a lot, Yasser. I really appreciate that. That would just make me go like, whoa, you're actually taking this seriously? Like, let me help you out in return, right? So that's another way of doing it. Another tip I have for you are just like, you know, quick celebrations, like, oh, it's your birthday. Oh, you got promoted. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Something like that. Like quick message like that. Another way is giving value, but I hate that advice because it's so broad and vague. And I want to go more tactical in that. I learned from my mentor, there's 4 ways to give value. So let's say hypothetically, I'm trying to get a job with Yasser, and Yasser is trying to start like a basketball tournament of some sort through our informational interview. How can I give him value so that he's willing to refer me into a role and likes me enough to help me out? Well, there's 4 ways. First is you can give them your expertise. So meaning in this case, let's say I already planned out a basketball tournament in the past. I can go up to Yasser. By the way, Yasser, quick email. These are 5 biggest mistakes I made when I was trying to create my basketball tournament. Be sure to avoid them. And if you need any help, let me know. That's one way to give value. Other way to give value is resources. So, articles, videos, courses, anything of that nature. Maybe there's a course online that I have for free about how to start your own basketball league or something. I'll send that to you yesterday. But being like, by the way, I just thought of you. I know you're starting a basketball tournament. Here's a free course. Help yourself, right? You can imagine that's like, oh, wow, okay. Other way to do it is time. So I can even let's say I'm dumb. I have no resources. What the heck do I do? You can actually I can actually volunteer for Yasser. So being like, right. Yasser, I know this is important to you, and I want to make this work for both of us. Are you okay if I maybe volunteer with you for maybe 2 hours a week just to help you get this started? That's just like, wow. And lastly is connecting them with people. So if I know like LeBron James, I might go up to Yasser and be like, yo, Yasser, I know LeBron James. Do you want me to connect the two of you? So those are some 4 practical ways to give advice. Again, I recommend once a month or twice a month for the first month, once every 2 weeks. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think that's really good advice because you're not bothering them. You're actually giving them some sort of information that's going to value them. And I think I just want to build one really quick thing. Just being in contact with them is just not just sending them emails. That's not the only way to do it. A lot of things that I've done is I've reached out to people on email. We've had an informational interview. We've connected on like Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever. And when you're putting out your content, when you're sharing other people's content, you're commenting on their content, you're making touch points with them. It's kind of like a follow-up. You're not directly following up, but if you're commenting on their content, you are bringing yourself top of mind for them. So you don't always have to bombard them with emails. There are other ways to go around it as well, I feel. This question could mean a number of different things, okay? Well, if you're talking about tricky questions, that's a different thing. If we're talking about how to respond, that's a different thing. What kind of question are you talking about? I'm going to assume this question is referring to the phone interview because that's usually the first point of contact, right? I want to lay out what the preface of this phone interview is. When recruiters usually reach out to you for a phone interview, it is to confirm a lot of things that they're seeing on your resume. And it's definitely a good sign. They've seen enough of your resume to give you a call, and they want to ask you a few questions before they put you in front of hiring managers. They want to make sure you're meeting all the criteria. So for example, if I'm hiring for an accounting position, and this accounting position is looking for someone who has a CPA, who has direct experience with accounts payable, accounts receivable, at least 3 years of that, and someone who's used QuickBooks, for example, that specific software, okay? On your resume, I'm seeing enough information to justify giving you a call. I want to give you a call to really flesh out what kind of experience that was. Maybe you were doing account receivable, but you only did it 1 day out of the month. Or maybe you only did it for like a month in your job and you never did it again. Maybe you've used QuickBooks, but you were only supervising someone learning the software. Or maybe you used it for like 2 weeks and you moved on to a different software. All of these questions, we really want to flesh out the level of experience you have so we might see if it's going to be a good fit. The resume doesn't really do a good enough job of explaining that whole story. So consider the phone interview almost like an expansion of that. We want to learn more about your resume, and we want to hear about how you ended up at this role, why you're a good fit. So I'll give you a quick example. Some of the biggest clients I have are high-level government companies here in Canada, and they're very specific about the kind of talent they bring in. They want people who are applying to their company for the specific experience they get in a regulatory environment. They want someone seeking a professional role. They don't want someone who's shooting their resume in every direction and this just happens to be one of the places that lands them, right? This is not something we can confirm on the resume. We can't tell if they're interested in the company specifically by the resume. So it's not that we're trying to trick you with these questions. We're just trying to get a better idea of the story your resume is telling to see if that might be a good fit for the role you're applying to, for the company you're applying to.
So it seems like the premise here is to stop seeing recruiters as they're trying to fool you or trick you out of things or catch the bad spots of you. And it seems like for job seekers, they just kind of got to be themselves in a way. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think there's good reason for job seekers to believe that as well, because they've been led by all their education that, you know what, you have to have a strategy to answer interview questions. You got to be prepared for it. And yes, you have to be prepared for it, but it doesn't mean someone's literally trying to trick you into giving them a wrong answer. I want you to succeed. I want you to give me a good answer. I don't want to waste my time talking to someone who's not qualified. I want to talk to someone, and then by the end of the call, I want to make sure, you know what? Thank God I called that person. We talked for half an hour. Now I know they're qualified. I can move them on to the hiring manager, right? So it's not like we're trying to trick you. We want you to succeed. So we'll give you a lot more time. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt much of the time. I think for more competitive firms, like Deloitte, KPMG, all these top level firms, because they do so many of these, because they have so many candidates coming in, they'll have a much more rigorous screening process. So you'll have some knockout questions on the application process itself. So you'll notice when you send your resume, you'll have like 3 questions. Do you have X amount of experience? Do you have a citizenship in this company? If you answer any one of those questions incorrectly, your resume is going to get rejected right from the get-go. And so on. You have a lot of filters that goes through. Sometimes people have you filling out a personality test. You'll be surprised how many people get filtered out because of a personality test. Do not just blaze through it. Literally pay attention to every one of them, because a lot of these personality tests are very, very intelligent at figuring out patterns. So it can tell if you're very anxious, if you're someone who doesn't like responsibility, if you're someone who doesn't respond well to authority. All these things are really going to play a factor in the employer actually moving forward with your application. So I think depending on the firm, you will have a lot more filters for more competitive ones and a lot less filters for less competitive ones. But at no point is the recruiter actively trying to weed you out of the process. They want you to succeed. And that's something really important to keep in mind, I feel. Yeah, it's kind of like saying, suppose you go on a speed dating thing, right? And you meet 5 different people. You don't want to force yourself to make them like you. If it's just not compatible, it's not compatible. Kind of the same thing with an employer. If there are certain things they're looking for and you're not it, that might be just not a good fit for you. And I'll give you a great example. Recently, I was hiring for an accounting position, and the people in an accounting role or in the team, they know what their culture is like. They know what kind of banter they like with their colleagues. They know what they like talking about. And they're a very quiet team. They're not someone with a lot of high energy. They're not people who like having a lot of huddles. They're like, okay, in the morning, this is the task we're going to do. Everyone kind of do their own thing. At the end of the week, we're going to meet again. We're going to talk about what we did. That's all. They don't want really high energy people. They don't want someone coming in, hey, what's going on, guys? I did this spreadsheet, that spreadsheet. And that it's not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just there's always a company culture. There's always a company fit. So I wouldn't say there's such thing as passing a personality test, because your personality just may not be a good fit for them. And that's entirely up to the employer to determine. It's impossible for you to know. But again, a better way of assessing that is talk to the employers, talk to the hiring managers before you apply. Ask them, what are you looking for in a new team member? They will tell you. So you don't have to waste your time doing a 30-minute long personality test if you know you're not what they're looking for. One thing I've learned is it's rarely the most talented person who's selected. It's always the guy or the person who's good enough and the hiring manager likes talking to, and they can see them on their team. You don't have to be an expert, because hiring is expensive. Companies don't want to spend 4 months nitty-gritty finding the exact best person with the 1 week extra of work experience than the other guy. They want to find someone who's good enough, who's good to talk to, who they can see on the team. Okay, you've got the job. That's kind of all it is. 100%. So one thing my firm does, and a lot of firms do, we actually brief our candidates before they go in for the interview. So we like preparing our candidates. We don't want to be strictly administrators of recruitment. We don't just want to, hey, thank you for submitting your application. I saw your application, give it to the hiring manager, good luck. That's not what I like doing. I really like going into depth. And if you talk to a lot of my clients, they'll tell you the same thing. I really like talking to the people, asking them what they're looking for, what their experience is. So before they go in for the interview, we actually go into quite a lot of depth into this is what you can expect from the interview. These are things they will be expecting you to know. These are things that you should bring to the table. Sometimes they'll give you very good examples of something in a phone interview, and we'll tell them, you know what, this is a great example you gave me. Make sure when you go in for the interview, if you get selected for the interview, make sure you mention the story. It was great. It was very, very relevant to it. So depending on the company, of course, there's confidentiality. I can't tell them about, hey, so it's question 1 to question 13. This is how you want to answer all of them. I can't do that, obviously, but I can give them a general theme. This interview is going to focus on the technical requirements. The second interview is going to focus more on the company fit. Prepare yourself accordingly. So I would say less than 0.5% of candidates that I talk to actually ask me actively, what can I expect? But those who do, I would be more than happy to help them out and give them pointers of what they can improve, what they can prepare for.
Yeah, you know what? Funny story. Like when I was working recruiting, I interviewed this candidate. I interviewed a bunch, but this one candidate reached out to me. They're like, "Hey, can I have some tips for the interview leading up to it?" And I was like, "Yeah, like of course. I need you to get hired." So I actually spent like 15 minutes or 20 minutes just running him down everything. He went to the interview. He felt so good. He got hired. He messaged me, "Yo, you literally told me the cheat codes." I'm like so happy, and I'm like, "Dang, like people need to know this," you know?
Well, being a career coach, I'm going to give you a very biased example. Here's the interesting thing, right? You can do something yourself, right? I'll give you a super simple example. Now, most people in the world, they believe the Earth is round. Am I correct? Like most of them, I guess. Right now, there's a bit of a community coming out with flat earthers and all that. But you don't have to go around the world, go into a spaceship to find out the Earth is round, do you? Because you're going to come back to the same exact conclusion based on a research someone else has done. What a career coach is going to do for you is give you the exact blueprint of how you can find yourself a job. It saves you all the time and trouble where you've graduated, you don't have money, you're working a part-time job, you're sending applications, you're not getting any responses back. Basically, you're on this hamster wheel where nothing is moving forward. If you invest in a career coach and they guide you and they save you all that time and give you exact resources to get that job, is that convenience worth your time and investment? If the answer is yes, hire a career coach. Same thing with something like fitness. Can you go to the gym yourself? Yes, you can. Can you lift weights yourself? Yes, you can. Are you still not getting in the best shape of your life? Hire a fitness coach. So when you work with an expert, they will just give you a shortcut to whatever you want. Whether you can afford the shortcut or not, that is entirely up to you.
So yes, ideally, if you can afford it.
Yeah.
Good point, man. I love this. I can speak to that first. So I resonate with a lot with this because I studied psychology, got a job in HR, and found my dream job in digital marketing. So I went through like an intense pivot thing, and I never really studied marketing or in school. But what helped me personally to get a job at marketing without having studied it is like not even studying it, it's just doing it. Like marketing is a thing we can all do. We can create landing pages, email sequences, and do copywriting. And the way I was able to get my job was basically I made a YouTube video where I rewrote a landing page for this digital marketing agency. They loved it. They saw my copywriting skills. Interview, got hired. Right. So again, that applied for marketing. That's what kind of worked for me. But I feel like if you're in the liberal arts and you studied history, but you want to get into maybe human resource, I think the best thing you can do is honestly, and this might sound like a little controversial, but you might want to work for someone for free to literally have that experience of like how an ATS system works or how does interviews work and things of that nature. And then you want to network the heck out of meeting a lot of HR professionals. I almost feel like a degree nowadays is undervalued, like meaning like it's not even valued much at all. I mean, as long as you can physically do the job and you're connected enough so when an opportunity pops up, you're referred in. I almost think that's what really matters. What do you got on that?
Yeah, that's interesting. This question actually reminds me of Austin's story, right? Because he started in like a biology background or something, and then he moved into a tech role with Microsoft. So first of all, the tech industry is unbelievably competitive, like especially in places like Silicon Valley and New York, California, all of that. And he was able to move from a role in a biology education into a tech role. So I feel like with this exact situation, your resume becomes an even smaller aspect of your job searching process. If you are trying to move into, suppose, HR with a history background, good luck explaining that on your resume. Or good luck getting a recruiter to look at your resume past the first 5 seconds of reading your cover letter, making a case for yourself in his head, and then justifying, you know what, I can move him forward. Because the moment they move your resume forward, the hiring manager is going to have one question. This person has a history background. How is this relevant to what I'm looking for? This way, because of this exact situation, the networking component becomes all that much more important for you, because you can actually talk to someone saying, listen, this is my background. I don't come from an HR background. I come from a history background. Recently, because of XYZ reason, I've just become very interested in HR. And chances are, if you're moving into a different industry, you've probably done something, read a course, read a book, something that got you interested in that other aspect. You can tell them, listen, I read this, I went to this resource, I'm super interested in this job now. If you were in my shoes, what would you be doing to align yourself with this role now? So they'll either give you advice or they'll say, you know what, we're actually looking for an entry-level role that doesn't really require a lot of experience, or you could start out in XYZ position. You could maybe start out as an admin position, learn more about the role there, and then move up into different roles. So different industries, different companies, different niches will have different entry points, and it's not always the entry level. You can always find other ways to get into the industry. Now, to give you another example, my background is in education. I graduated with a focus in counseling and in educational leadership, but my first job was as a recruiter. So the transferable skills were being able to talk to people, being able to listen to people, because that's essentially what a counselor does, and to give people the information they need between the hiring process, right? So between the application process and moving forward. I had to outline those transferable skills before I sent in my resume. So there's only so much you can do in your resume, but when you go in for an interview, when you're doing your informational interviews, you can explain that in a lot more detail. So if this person is looking to transition into a new industry, I would say find the 10 companies like we talked about earlier on, find industry experts there, ask them, tell them about your situation, and listen to their advice. Literally, that's the best thing you can do right now.
Understanding, like getting advice from people who are 10 steps ahead of you, so that you know the next 10 steps is very clear. That's super key. Like, I love that.
Let's do this. I'll give you one. You share one, and we can just keep doing that.
Like use notes?
No, like
for all.
For LinkedIn, I'll share one do or don't, and then you can share one do or don't, and then we can kind of just bounce back, because I feel like I can talk about hundreds at this point. My first, this is a little bit of a gripe I have, those really short comments on your content. Great post. Thank you for sharing. Nice. Great. Like, stop doing that. It doesn't show any value. It doesn't tell me you read my post. It doesn't tell me what you learned out of it. It doesn't show me anything about what you're looking for. Take more time into your comments, because if you look at most pieces of content that are out on LinkedIn, either they will not get engagement, they will get engagement asking them for something, hey, get me a job, hey, do this, hey, do that, or great post, or whatever. If you take the time to write out a nice solid chunk or 2 paragraphs explaining to me, you read what I wrote, you read what content I shared, and what you got out of it, the chances of me engaging in a discussion with you are so much higher. So instead of going to like 10 different people's profiles and writing, thank you for sharing, thank you for sharing, thank you for sharing, share what you think of their post, share what your insights are, do that. It's going to help you so much more than just, thank you. And I'm like, great. What can I do with that comment? I can just like it and move on. I can't do much else.
Did someone comment on your post saying hi? Like, just hi?
Yeah.
I saw that. I was like, what? Hi.
Usually I wouldn't respond to those comments, but this person graduated from my university, so I said, okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, I'll reply to your hi, but otherwise, like, don't do that. Don't just type hi.
In a comment, you know, like in a comment.
Like my whole post was about something completely different, and I got hi.
And then you have to reply. You replied in the best politically correct way. Well, how can I help you? Hello.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say. Like, hello, how is your day going? What can I do?
This is the point. I saw that. I was like, oh, I died. That was just funny.
Well, I reached out to her because I was like, listen, there are better ways for you to connect with people, instead of hi or hello. Yeah, I mean, I like helping people because I know there's so much to learn when you're typing highs on people's profiles.
Oh my god, that's hilarious. For me, a do or don't just add random people on your LinkedIn, just randomly blasting off connection requests. Be sure there's like a reason why you're sending a connection request. Maybe you saw their YouTube video, maybe you found them at an event or whatever it is. And be sure to send a connection request with a note. And that's going to differentiate you compared to everyone else who sends a connection request. Quick and simple, do and don't.
Other LinkedIn tip for me, the number one would just be inactivity. I feel like just having a profile sit there doesn't really do much for you. It's a tool that you can use, but if you don't use it, it's just kind of lying around like a wrench that you don't use. One of the main things you can start doing is engaging with people in your community, leaving meaningful comments, following pages that you're really interested in, and just actively trying to be more verbal or trying to leave more written comments as opposed to just liking. Because I feel like Liking is the most passive thing you can do when it comes to engaging with content. You just push a button next, push a button next. And then as soon as you click that like button, you become a part of like 20, 30, 40, 50 people who've also liked it, and you don't really stand out at all. So if there's one thing I want to see more on LinkedIn is people being active with conversations on LinkedIn. And I think that's going to go a long way for them, even with their job search.
That's a really good one. I like that. I think one thing I would add, my last one for me is, it's interesting. Like, if you're best friends with the person, don't ignore this advice. But let's say you sort of know someone and you're connected, but you don't really know them. Don't start off a message being like, "Hi."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, whenever I get those messages like, "Hi," I'm like, what do you want? Like, is this an MLM? Like, I'm waiting for like the pitch right now. Like, I'm literally just waiting for it. You know what I mean? I feel like on LinkedIn, you just kind of gotta get straight to the point. Hi, Alif, I saw this. I just want to know if you're interested in this. That's it. You know what I mean? Instead of like, hi.
Yeah.
Hi. How are you? I'm good. And then like there's days between replies and everything. I don't know. I think being straight to the point really helps on LinkedIn. You know?
Yeah. Or something that just doesn't have I don't know what you want out of this message, right? If you send me something like, "Hi, here's my resume, have a look." Why?
Yeah.
Who are you? What kind of job do you want? Like, why are you reaching out to me? Give me some context to work with. I feel a lot of people use LinkedIn like Facebook or like Instagram. "Hi, bro." That's it. What's up? How's it going? Good to see you on LinkedIn as well. Good that you and I are both on LinkedIn. It's super awesome. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Have more of an objective with what you're saying. But I think, those would be our top tips. You shouldn't be spending too much time on that, because we can spend like a whole hour just talking about that alone.
Oh my God, we've been through enough.
Client of mine, same exact deal. She was looking at a consulting job, and it required 3 years of experience preferred. So we recommended, just reach out to the company anyway. And they said the reason we have 3 years is a lot of people who are starting out in consulting, they work here for 6 months, then they move on to a bigger firm. So we don't want someone coming in, working for like 6 months, and then we have to hire someone again. That's why we wrote 3 years. The job itself is absolutely entry level. You don't need a lot of experience for that. You would not have known that had you not talked to someone on the actual team. So I would change the definition of experience, because in a lot of ways, if you know how to show your experience, if you know how to write a proper resume, you can show transferable skills. If a job is asking for 3 to 5 years of experience, it's just not an entry-level job. And I've seen a lot of posts on LinkedIn, hiring managers, stop asking for 5 years of experience in entry-level job. What entry-level job is asking for 5 years of experience? I don't know which job they're looking for. And if there is one, then yes, the hiring manager should really reevaluate whether it is an entry-level job. And I guess that's another thing as well. Who is defining whether it's an entry-level job? Is it actually an entry-level job? Is it not an entry-level job? So, advice to anyone seeking an entry-level job: reach out to the hiring managers, ask them if that's exactly what they're looking for. Do they want this level of experience? And don't let number of years deter you from applying. That would be my advice. What do you think?
That's really good. I love that, man. It's really good. I guess the job descriptions aren't really an exact mirror of the role itself. That's for me. I think the game here is to just get the hiring manager to like you. Like that's it. And whether that is through a phone call or maybe a conversation you have at a networking event. Maybe if you have a really good conversation about self-development, you're freaking driven and they see themselves in you and like all this stuff. As long as you can get that like piece and get them to like you, that's the way to get into a job. And you can use a lot of the strategies that we talked about in this conversation to get there. But I think the game at this point, when it comes to entry-level roles, is just to get the influential key player to like you. Like that's the code. And how you break it is up to you, but I feel like that's the game and how I approach entry-level roles.
Yeah, and I think an interesting point to build on that, experience is kind of like the first requirement, right? We need to make sure you can do the job. Suppose you have a couple of candidates with the exact same level of experience. Everything after that point is just likability. It's just about how well you can fit in with the team. People work with people they like. People hire people they like, right? So you have to focus on that likability factor. And I can't tell you how many interviews I've seen where the candidate had every single requirement in terms of technical expertise, but they just weren't a good fit. Maybe they were really quiet, or they were just answering questions and not really contributing themselves. It's really a factor that contributes to you getting hired or not. So,
Yeah, I almost feel like the most important skill in job hunting is the social aspect and getting and
Right.
building rapport and like be getting on calls and making you feel good after the call. And that skill
Yeah.
is just so important.
Yeah.
Mm.
I've seen this with a lot of candidates. They self-diagnose the problem before they even know what the problem is, right? They'll say, Yasser, I'm not getting a lot of interviews because people are racist, or I'm not getting a lot of interviews because people don't want to hire immigrants. I'm not getting any interviews or calls because I'm from India. How do you know that? How do you know that for a fact? And the thing is, most of us, we don't know that for sure. I wouldn't assume that recruiters are looking at your resume as a jack of all trades. Now, the strategy in making a resume is to structure it in a way where you can show how your skills are relevant and you are including the most relevant experience in there. If you had jobs that are not directly relevant, but you can show certain tasks that you had there that may be relevant, it's all about learning what to include and, more importantly, what not to include, right? So, for example, if you are someone who's applying for a hospitality role and a lot of your experience is in customer service, you can show how much transferable experiences and skills there are from customer service to hospitality. If I see 6 different industries or 6 different jobs in completely different industries on your resume, I don't know what kind of job you're looking for, right? I can't tell where your heart lies. Are you someone who wants to do this aspect or that aspect? Talking about the 8 to 10 years, the qualification aspect is definitely there. Yes, you have a lot of experience from this other country. And like any country, Canada will mostly prefer someone who has worked in a local environment because they want to know you can speak to local people. They want to know there's not a language barrier. They want to make sure that you know what it's like to work in a company in Canada with the rules set, with the regulations here. And there's good reason for that, right? Because a lot of people come from a different country and their first agenda is, I need to find a job in any job. They won't know much about the job market. They won't know much about the compensation. They won't know much about the location. They'll come, they'll find a job, and then all of a sudden they realize, you know what, that other company is paying a lot more. You know what, the actual pay rate for this job is a lot higher than what I'm getting paid here. And within 3 to 6 months, they're out and they're looking for another job again. So employers don't want to take that risk of teaching someone all of that stuff, whereas they have someone already in the country who knows what the industry standard is, who knows what the salary band is. Now, to give you advice, if you're new in the country, my first advice would be do the research. How much do people make? How much do people with 8 to 10 years of experience, what kind of job title can I be looking at? And with your resume, it's going to be really important for you to show them that you can actually perform the task they're looking for. So for example, if you're going to be working with Google AdWords, you're going to be working with a lot of these paid campaign, and you've done that in India, you've done that wherever you're coming from, a lot of that is very transferable. And you need to be able to communicate that not just in your resume, but again, creating your network from scratch is going to be even more important. And everything you and I talk about is just going back to that networking side of things. Talk to people in the company, show them you've done it, convince them. Once they talk to you, once they like you, you will have a much better chance of getting a job.
Have you ever had to decline a candidate because they were new to the country?
Because of what?
Because they were an immigrant, like they were new to the country,
No,
they didn't have.
we don't reject people because they're an immigrant. We only see if they can actually perform the task, right? So for a lot of people might have HR experience in a different country, but when they come here, the HR practices here might be very different from HR practices there. We've seen people who have done 10 years of recruitment in another country. They'll come to Canada, and I swear to God, their resume looks like it's come straight out of a high school. So I don't know why that is. There might be different Canadian standards to a resume, different Canadian standards to recruitment as well, different practices. Like there's certain questions you can ask here that you can't ask elsewhere. Certain states allow you to ask compensation. How much are you making now? Other states don't allow you to do that. In different countries, there are different practices. So it's always good to know someone knows the industry practice where you're applying for a job. So I think there is this fear with a lot of immigrants that I'm getting rejected because I'm an immigrant, but it just shows you have to create those connections and show people, prove it to them that you can actually perform the job. And your resume should just be a very, very, very small fraction of your job searching strategy. An assumption here is I have X degree, I should get Y job. Doesn't work like that. It just doesn't simply work like that. You can have 50 degrees and still not be qualified if you don't have the experience, you don't have the communication skills, you're not applying to the right jobs. You could have an MBA and all these degrees and you're applying for senior accounting positions. There's so many reasons you don't have a job without knowing what your resume looks like, without knowing which jobs you're applying to, without knowing what time you're applying for these jobs, it's really impossible for us to diagnose that, right? This person, again, they've diagnosed their own problem. I'm not getting a job despite having these degrees. They're associating having their degree as a means to getting a job, when you and I both know how much time do recruiters spend reading their education section? I would say 0.5 second. Oh, great, degree in accounting, awesome, next. Yes, maybe if you're in a more competitive firm, they're like, we want someone from UBC, we want someone from these higher tier universities. But if you're applying for 99% of these small to medium-sized businesses, your degree is not exactly something we're spending a lot of time on. So I would troubleshoot it, asking yourself, are you getting any phone screens? If the answer is no, you know your problem is your resume. Are you getting phone screens but not getting to the interview? If the answer is no, that means you're saying something on the phone screen that makes them not move you forward. If you're moving to interviews and you're not getting the interviews, you're not getting any offers, you know the problem is the interview. So you can troubleshoot that. The other thing is, this is all based on the online job application model. You have to ask yourself, have I been doing any networking? I'm guaranteeing this person asking probably isn't doing any networking if they're assuming that they're getting rejected based on their degree. So my advice would be to really become realistic about what kind of jobs you're looking for. Are you actually qualified for them? And then connect with people on the team like we advise for every other position.
And that is it for this video. Be sure to follow or connect with Yasir on LinkedIn and subscribe to his YouTube channel. And if you want more job hunting tips like these sent to your email inbox, be sure to subscribe to my email newsletter, where I'll be sharing with you career tips, marketing tips, podcast vlogs, and a lot of fun stuff. You don't want to miss out on the newsletter. It is my baby. But be sure to subscribe to it. You can find it in the description down below. Other than that, thanks a ton for watching this video, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.